Okay, I think we are going to go ahead and get this party started. Where's my stream? There it is. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our She-Ra Season 1 discussion live stream. We took last week off, took a little bit of a break before we wrapped up the first season, but we are back, and we are here to talk about the last 2 episodes of Season 1. We're not going to get into Season 2 today. I haven't really prepared for Season 2 yet, so we're just going to wrap up Season 1 today. I am joined, as always, by my bestie from another testy, my...
Was that ad-libbed?
I don't know if I came up with that, but I didn't think of that beforehand. So, but yeah, my friend from across the pond, Tom from Curmudgeon Media, as always. Tom, say hi to the people.
I don't know if I want to after that.
That's fair. That's fair enough.
I'm experiencing a lag. Trying to now I'm trying to think of something in that format.
I said something more cursed than you for once.
What rhymes with sack?
Oh my god.
Nah, nothing. I'm getting nothing.
Nothing. I'll admit I forgot a lot of what happened in the F being covered. Yeah, no worries, Toon. I'll admit that I watched these final 2 episodes like last week when I thought that we were going to be finishing up the Season 1 discussion last week. So I'm a little less, it's a little less fresh in my mind this week as it normally is. So yeah, I apologize if I also am a little all over the place and I missed something. So you're not the only one, Toon. But thanks so much for joining, as always. Really happy to see you here. Let me see what my notes say. That would be a really good place to start, actually.
Unfortunately, I got COVID, hence we didn't stream last week.
Yes, that is unfortunately why we took last week off.
I got friggin' COVID and it sucked, and it ruined Christmas.
I know, that's
the Grinch
so
didn't
awful.
even need to steal anything.
Yeah, that's awful. But we're glad that you're feeling better. Glad that you're doing well now, and
I'm not even completely better. I'm better than I was.
Yeah.
You can probably still hear in my voice. I still.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
we are
really
wishing
did
you
a friggin' number on me.
We are wishing you a full, speedy recovery. Scrambling for convention next week. Oh, best of luck, Toon. All the best. All right, let's go ahead and dive right into the episode. Why don't we? So where we left off last time, I'm remembering, it's coming back to me now. Where we left off last time was Catra had just left Adora to die, essentially, and Adora was being told to let go, right, by Light Hope. And we talked a little bit about what this meant already. Adora has her attachments to people, like her relationships, her friendships that she values. And Light Hope is deliberately trying to sever those connections. And we talked a little bit about last time, kind of comparing this a little bit to the Avatar, The Last Airbender idea of severing the connections, and how it didn't really quite make as much sense in Avatar as it does here in She-Ra. And one other point, just to think about, of why I think that it works a lot better in She-Ra than it does in Avatar, is that by the end of the series, we learn that letting go of her connections is without a doubt a bad thing. Light Hope has ulterior motives, right? We aren't that clear of that from this point in the story, but by the end of the story, we're very clear that Light Hope has her reasons for wanting to sever Adora's connections, right? Whereas like in Avatar The Last Airbender, it's seen as like this just objectively good thing that Aang is supposed to do to get to the Avatar state, but like it doesn't really make sense. It's not like it's not really explained why, you know? So
it kind of comes out of nowhere. And then
yeah.
it's like, oh, but if you leave now, you won't be able to go into the Avatar state.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
kind
it's
of like
like,
a little
okay.
contrived
And then that
contrived.
doesn't even end up happening. Like you get into the Avatar state just fine,
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
like never brought up again.
Yeah. So I another little nitpick of that of why I think it works a lot better in Shira. The idea of and also like you know, we talked also a lot about like what does Shira represent? What does this transformation of Adora into Shira represent for Adora's character? And of course we talked a lot about like how it means her coming into her own self, her true self. And what does that mean? What does her true self mean? Her true self is defined by her relationships to other people, right? Her friendships and her willingness to fight for the people she cares about is what makes Adora who she is fundamentally. And that's what makes her Shira in a lot of ways, right? So that connection is being continued to be strung together through this first season, even though it's not like clear that's what's happening yet.
So what you're saying is it's defined by gay.
Literally, it's defined by gay. Like, unironically, it's defined by gay. She needs to embrace gay.
I mean, where's the lie though?
And literally, where is the lie? That's, I mean, like I said, she's defined by her relationships, and part of that is her embracing her queerness, right? I mean, like, all joking aside, like, you know, I very much believe that Shira is a queer allegory. You know, it's a coming
You don't
into
need to.
oneself.
You don't need to just believe that. It's been the creators
It's
of the show have
it's
said that.
it's literally it's baked in the show that like it's a queer allegory. So like, and like you said, the creators have said it, and of course, like, you know, Nate Stevenson is trans, and like it's very clear to me that there's a lot of him in Adora and in this story, which is really cool. Exactly,
And
Ed. Shira and the Princesses of Gay, 100%. Absolutely accurate.
I think this is the first episode where Swiftwind talks.
I think so too. Yeah.
And Swiftwind, I always like to think of as the like the manifestation of her queer pride.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I like that. I like that a
Like
lot, actually.
bombastic and in everyone's face all the time and loud. Like an aspect an aspect of Adora's personality that I don't think she would necessarily wear quite so proudly, but that's why she has
That's why
Swiftwind
she
to
has
do
to
it for
embrace
her.
it. Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, that's actually a really good point. I didn't even really think about that, but that's so true. Um, yeah, Adora actually nailing it when saying that Light Hope watching her is creepy, right? Like we always kind of look past that. This is kind of, in my opinion, another one of the things that Shira does really well in the subversion of tropes, right? Like, you know, there's a common trope in fantasy where a mentor guardian character, right, will like be watching over the protagonist since childhood, right? You know, you think of Dumbledore like in Harry Potter, right? Like, oh, I've been watching you from a distance but not like doing anything. And like that is objectively creepy. And like I like how Adora just like straight up calls it out here, because it is creepy and it is weird that Light Hope has been doing that. And Adora freaking out, in my notes here, I just have a note that says Adora freaking out is so unintentionally funny. Like the show is so funny.
It's I try my best not to think about Dumbledore or Harry Potter, to be
Yes,
honest.
that's fair.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting you should bring up that comparison though, because there's more than one similarity there in terms of the idea of an authority figure, basically raising a character so that they can slaughter them or
Right,
martyr them
right,
in some sense.
right.
It's just that this show is a little more certain of how bad that is.
Right, exactly. The show very much paints it as a bad thing by the end of by the end of the show. Um yeah, Adora is so funny too. The show is really, especially the first season, I feel like the humor is really underrated.
Yeah, let's talk about Light Hope though,
Light
because I
Hope.
don't. This is Light Hope is one of the most important characters in the show, and
Yes.
this is the first time. Is this the first time we see Light Hope,
It's
or
the
do
first
do
time
we
we see her
see?
like, face to face, quote unquote, right?
Because I know Light Hope controls the temple,
Right.
and there's aspects of that that play into our interpretation of the last episode. But we don't actually see light. Like, we don't actually see light, or do we? I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, I think we see her like in the dreams, right? Like the vision of her, but we don't actually like see her.
Oh yeah, we do, and it's just Grace Jones.
Right, right, exactly.
It's literally just Grace Jones, except evil.
Yep.
Um, well, not evil per se, just amoral.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, where do we rate Light Hope in the grand scheme of robot characters?
Ooh, in the great scheme of
Like,
robot characters,
whose entire personality is that they don't have one.
she's up there for me because I always have a soft spot for robot characters that
Act
have
like robots.
that have that spark of humanity in them, right? And like go against their programming to like connect with people. Like one of my favorite examples of this, and this is a very cheesy example, is freaking Tech from the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, if you all remember that GameCube classic game. But that one, one of the bad guys have this like AI robot that they use or whatever, right? But then it becomes friends with Princess Peach and like eventually like falls in love with her and like helps her escape and all that stuff, right? And I absolutely love that trope of the robot catching feelings, right, and like betraying their programming because of like the feelings that they caught. And with Light Hope, it's not like romantic, but I really do like that little bit of humanity with her that we get with like her and Mara later on, right? And that's like the thing that eventually like pulls her from the brink too, right?
It's yeah, I mean, it's complicated, isn't it? Because that aspect of her is so deeply, deeply buried beneath
Right,
layers
exactly.
and layers of programming.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But
but
the power
I'm a
of
big
love, right? The power of friendship is like stronger.
I'm a big fan of robot characters whose being a robot only makes them more likable or endearing in a way. Like when they made Deus Ex, the original Deus Ex game back in the 2000s, the voice actor who voices the protagonist, JC Denton, specifically did a performance that was meant to sound like robotic
Mm.
and dry and without a personality. And the whole point of that was so that they were more of a blank slate, so that the audience could like project on them better.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, but what it ended up doing was having like the inverse effect of actually giving him a personality. Um,
Yeah,
and all these lines that would otherwise be kind of generic suddenly sound really like sarcastic and
right.
funny, and Light Hope kind of has a similar thing, except it feels deliberate. It's not like a happy accident that it turns out that way. It's very much like Light Hope's um alien perspective on humanity and the way people are and the way they behave and why they behave that way um is kind of endearing.
Yeah, it is, right? Like her turning into like a little kid being like, forgive me, my human protocol
Is
is
this
out of
better?
date. Is this better? Like
Oh
that's
god, no, that's worse.
yeah, and Adora just be like, no, that's fucking way worse, actually. Like it's hilarious. And it is kind of endearing, right?
That's the exact line.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fucking way worse. Just those exact words.
It's way fucking worse, bro. Put that shit away. Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I completely agree. Um, let's see. Yeah. So Swiftwind shows up, right? And I didn't even think about that idea of Swiftwind being the um the kind of embodiment of her gay pride, and that
That's what Swift Wind
it's
is.
so fitting. It's actually so fitting. It's hilarious.
He's
uh
a rainbow horse.
with like a
He shoots
a
rainbow
gay
beams.
flamboyant voice.
He's literally like a pride float.
He is. Oh my god, that's so funny. Yeah, so Swiftwind shows up, right, and like rescues her. He's hilarious. Um,
He immediately commits regicide.
right, exactly. Let's see. Where does my next note go? Oh, okay. This is important too, right? A moment for Glimmer and her mom. So Glimmer and Bo are trying to figure out like what to do, right? And like, you know, Shira isn't back yet. This is another example, right, of like one of the many times that this has like already happened, right? We saw this happen when they went to the fright zone, but it's like another instance of Adora being impulsive, rushing headfirst into like what she thinks a solution is going to be, trying to be like a martyr, right? But then her ending up getting in more trouble and like needing to be rescued by other people, by Glimmer, right? And so this is literally like the second time already that this has happened, and it's an important mark of her character.
Yeah, get used to that because it takes her like 6 seasons to learn that
To learn
lesson.
not to do that anymore. Yeah, seriously.
Literally takes her until like the last episode where it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so like Glimmer and Bo are like freaking out and they're like, we have to do something, we have to go rescue her, right? And um there's something here to see you that's the whole thing with Swiftwind is so funny. um and then we get like an important moment like with Angela later too, right? After this whole funny moment of like them freaking out. I do love this though, the expressions and everything, like with Glimmer being like, he has wings, he can talk, and them just like freaking out. And Swiftwood just being like, all right, I'll give you guys a minute to freak out and then we'll talk. And they just like have these faces. It's really good.
I feel like everyone in the show and outside the show, except for me, I wouldn't count myself in this assessment. But a lot of people really hate Swiftwind. Swiftwind is like one of
Yeah.
the least popular characters in the show.
I think he's funny. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I think he's
I think he's
hilarious.
funny. I think he's kind of meant to be
Oh
annoying.
yeah. Oh, it's absolutely meant to be annoying.
Like that's sort of the whole point. So I
Right.
feel like I don't know. I don't
He's
know.
doing his job.
He's doing what he's meant to do.
Exactly.
He's
Exactly.
meant to be cloying and get on your fucking nerves.
Yep. Yep. But I do like that, you know, he has that connection to Shira. I think that that's fun. And then of course we get a really important moment with Glimmer and her mom, right? So Glimmer is feeling like she can't tell her mom what's happening. She feels like she needs to like lie and sneak around and go behind her mom's back, right? You know, Bo is like, Glimmer, you're glitching and your mom and whatever, right? Um and even Glimmer now kind of has a little bit of a moment of like that overbearing responsibility, right? And it comes and goes for Glimmer in a way that it's not as consistent the way it is with Adora, right? With Glimmer, she like sometimes takes on this responsibility, but sometimes she's like incapable of taking on the responsibility, and that's when she'll like blame other
She's
people, right?
she's got that like only child thing, that sheltered only child thing of like really, really desperately wanting to prove herself and
Yeah.
wanting to have the capacity to take responsibility,
Right.
while at the same time being really bad at taking responsibility because she's never had to take responsibility before. So it's like she sucks at it. She doesn't have the capacity. Like she sometimes doesn't have the capacity to take responsibility. Like she'll take responsibility until she realizes about the adverse aspects of taking responsibility
Right.
and having to take onus for your mistakes and your actions, which is something she can't do and is like to a certain degree incapable
Right.
of doing because she's a sheltered only child.
Right, right, totally. That's a good take on that. Yeah, Toon Swiftwind being the reason you dropped the show. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But I'm glad that
It's
you're
like
enjoying it now.
he's not quite in it enough. Like the writers use him just the right amount,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
I
He's
agree.
barely in it. Like he shows up every now and again to be annoying or to be there when they need to fly. Um,
To be gay, the voice of gay.
to be the voice of gay. I love him in the Beast Island arc. That's all
Oh
great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah, so Glimmer is like ready to sneak out, right, and go before her mom even realizes she's gone. And we get like this funny little jump scare moment, right, of Glimmer like opening the door and Angela being right there and Glimmer like glitching out. It's really good. Again, just the expressions and the faces of the show are really, really funny. And it kind of reminds me of like Steven Universe season 1 a bit.
Yeah, with Steven Universe it's different, isn't it? Because with Steven Universe, I believe they kind of had to somewhat mask what the show was meant to be because Cartoon Network wanted to push more comedy and they wanted to push
Right, of course, of course.
that aspect of thing. And it's still really good. Like it's great. It's a great comedy. It's really funny. But you can tell they were eager to kind of move on from that as quickly as they
Yeah,
could. And
yeah. I just mean like the expressions and like especially the comedy kind
it,
of just reminds me
I
of
just
that.
think it's kind of interesting because I bring it up because it makes me wonder if maybe there was a similar situation here where
Yeah, I can
actually
imagine.
they did have a pretty clear picture of what they wanted the show to become from the start, but Netflix had other ideas of what they wanted the show to be.
I mean, yeah, I actually could totally believe that because, like, I mean, like Nate Stevenson pitched this show. I mean, first of all, we know that like this is like the first real show that he worked on, right? And or like that he show
Well,
ran.
like it was his first show running
Yeah.
experience.
So that could also explain a little bit of like why, there's I mean, don't get me wrong, season 1 is amazing. I love season 1 of the show and like
But it's the
especially
weakest
on
season.
rewatch, like there's a lot to appreciate about it. But yes, I agree that it's the weakest season. And there's an understanding to be had of like having a little bit of grace for, them being first time showrunners and kind of trying to find their footing. But I think also the fact that this was pitched as like a reboot, right? Like this is an existing property, right? Like of course there's going to be some kind of idea of like what is to be expected going into it, right? And also like we know for a fact that the queerness had to be all subtext, right, up until like the very end, essentially, right? So that's another similarity, right, with Steven Universe.
Yeah, although only one of them got cancelled for it.
Yeah, yep, exactly. But I mean, that's
Um,
the thing, right? Steven Universe opened the door, right, for Shira to not get canceled.
yeah, it's little baby steps.
Yep,
I wish it didn't have to
exactly.
be that way, but that's
Yeah,
the way that it is.
it is. But I mean, hey,
Um,
Steven Universe walked so that Shira could run, so that fucking Owl House could fly.
fly.
So yeah, baby steps. We're getting there. We're getting there. I also really love this moment between Swiftwood and Angela. I think their faces, again, the expressions are just so good. Like her face here, just being like, I think of myself more as a role model for all horse kind. Swiftwood is great.
I need to plug my laptop in because it's dying.
Oh my
Give me a
gosh,
mo.
plug it in, plug it in. I mean, what? A talking horse? What's happening? Yeah, and then of course, Angela's like, you should go track down Adora, right? And this is a big step for her character, right? We know that she kind of like takes these incremental steps up until what is it, third season, at the end of the third season when Angela makes her big sacrifice, right? But we see like these steps that she kind of takes to get to that point, right? Like we know that her kind of like biggest flaw is that she's a very passive like observer. She's not very action oriented and she doesn't like want to take risks essentially, right? And that ends
He's a
up like,
coward.
yeah, exactly. And that ends up putting her in more danger at the end of the day, right? And so this is something that she like is slowly kind of overcoming. And this allowing Glimmer to like go save Adora here, I think is a big step for her, right? Like she says the line, I will not consign you to the same regrets. And we already had that scene, right, in the last episode where Angela finally like admitted to Glimmer, right? Like the reason that she's so scared essentially is because she blames herself for the loss of their father, right? Of Glimmer's father. So yeah, I think like this is a really big moment for her.
If only he wasn't actually dead.
If only, right? If only.
If only he was actually fine. I mean, I don't know if you could describe him as fine, but he's not dead.
He's definitely not dead, yeah. Yeah, so Angela orders her to go find Adora and bring her home. And they go. And we
And they
get
go.
one last moment of Swiftwind. When we're back, I'd like to talk about freeing the horses at your stables. LOL. Oh, Swiftwind. All right, let's see. What else do I have in my notes here? Um, Okay, yeah. So we get the scene now with Entrapta and Catra, right? So Catra gets the crystal, right, and brings it back to Entrapta, and Entrapta is able to analyze it and whatever, and you know, what am I trying to say here? Like, she makes a lot of progress, right, with the crystal and everything, right? And Catra continues to use her manipulation and like try to win over Entrapta, right? And try to get Entrapta to like do what is going to make Catra look good so that Catra can continue to like manipulate her way up the ranks, right? And like continue to gain that power that she thinks that she wants, right? I'm not going to say that she wants power, but she thinks that she wants power, right? And she
Doesn't
has
know how to want anything else.
Yep, exactly. And she has this line here, right? Like, you belong with us. And Trapta, like, has this smile that's, like, really cute, right? Like, just for a brief moment that we see, like, and Trapta being happy that Catra says, like, you belong with us, right? And we know that this is something that, like, Catra is able to manipulate in Entrapta, right? Like, Entrapta being left behind is something that, like, Catra has kind of made Entrapta feel, right? Um, and yeah, this feeling of like, oh yeah, you belong here with us. And Trapped is like looking for a place to belong, right? I think like both of them are in a weird way.
Yeah, although the sad thing about that is that you never really get the impression Catra cares about Entrapta in any way.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like kind of makes this interaction all the more heartbreaking, right? Because like Entrapta is so excited and she's like so happy to like have this place to belong. And she's like so excited that like someone is finally like taking an interest in like her work and like what
And it's
she's excited
completely
about.
insincere.
Exactly. It's like Katra has all of her ulterior motives and it's completely insincere. And like that's going to make the betrayal later, like, more heartbreaking, right? Because Entrapta um, finally feels like she has like a friend to share these things with. And she very much doesn't in Katra, at least. But she does have Scorpia.
Scorpia and Emily.
Scorpia and Emily, the besties.
Where do we rank Emily in robot
Oh,
characters?
Emily's definitely up there too. She's freaking friend shaped. Are you kidding me?
She's just a round friend with legs.
Could you imagine like Emily and One being friends? Just a
I
couple of round,
cannot.
just a couple of round robots. I'm gonna draw that.
I cannot imagine that. One needs psychiatric help first. One's not
He
okay.
is very much not okay. I want to draw a little scene with One and Emily. I don't know what they would say. I don't know what they would do with each other, but it would be
One is
cute.
just Wheatley.
Oh my god, I want to draw Emily, Wheatley, and One all together. Just a couple of three.
Isn't Wheatley in space?
Is he? Oh yeah, I guess he's floating through space now.
Rip.
Rip and bip. Catra, this moment with Scorpia, Catra, Scorpia, and Entrapta, the little drawing is so cute. I call it the Super Pal Trio.
The
Oh my
Super
god.
Bell Trio, they're the best friend
The
squad.
knockoff best friend squad. Yeah.
It's Wish.com best friend squad.
Toon likes the idea. All right, Emily, One, and maybe Wheatley call it in from space if we decide to throw him in there. Oh my gosh, yes, the round robot pals.
The Rowl.
The Rowls. Yeah, so Scorpia is adorable and I love her. I'm a bit of an artist, she says.
I love that bit.
Their faces are just like no. And then Entrapta like trying to like dumb it down for Catra, being like, I used math. Wait, you know what math is,
what
right?
math is?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so funny. But yeah, really just, important to note here the kind of emotional manipulation that's going on underneath this like this development, right? Like Entrapta wanting to feel like she belongs and Catra not really interested in what Entrapta has to say other than what it can gain for her, right?
I'm trying to find the bit with the drawing. I want to look at the drawing,
Oh
and
my
I
god.
can't find it.
Hold on, I'll go back to the drawing.
It's a beautiful piece of art that everyone should appreciate.
I'm going back to it. Hold on. We have to see it properly. Scorpia is drawing stick figures holding hands.
Oh yeah, because she's like, yeah, Scorpia's taking notes. It's like that's no.
Yeah, like no, she's not. I love the eyes. She draws like Entrapta's goggles with the eyes. It's like the fingers are just like three like sticks. Oh my god, so good, so good. I mean, this is
like,
great in my opinion. This is a beautiful drawing.
I think she's doing the absolute best she can, given the fact she does not have thumbs.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, considering she doesn't have fingers, she's doing freaking great. Oh my
It's,
gosh.
you know, very clear sense of shape language.
Yep, yeah, totally, totally. She's
I
got
like
the
how
Entrapta's hair.
even her drawing of Catra has a scowl.
Yeah. Yeah, so, Entrapta gets asked about her theories, right? Scorpia can't push a button, but she can draw. That's commitment. Exactly. Yeah, the way that Scorpia draws Catra is freaking adorable. The little angry scowl is so funny. Yeah, so Catra asks like, "Oh, what do you think that means, right? What can we do with that?" And Entrapta's just like so excited that someone is finally asking her about her theories, right? But yeah, it's heartbreaking because we know that Catra has her ulterior motives here.
That's the no, I mean, nah, I'm gonna discard that thought.
Okay.
Pretend I didn't say anything else.
Okay, great. All right, let me take a look at my notes here. Oh, and then we kind of we slipped in the Scorpia backstory with the Black Garnet too, right? So I thought that was, or that, I guess that's a little bit later. We get this like scene with the first ones like being explained to Adora, and it's so interesting rewatching this scene, right? And like rewatching
with
this
the full context of what they
yeah,
are.
exactly. Like rewatching this episode and this interaction with the full context of like knowing what Light Hope is up to. I won't spell it out completely because we don't really need to at this point. But obviously, Light Hope has her ulterior motives, right? Like she has her and the first one's plan and reasoning for what they want to do with Shira, what they want to do with Adora. And the first time you watch this, like I feel like again, it's a really well done playing with that trope of like the mysterious older guardian like withholding information, right? And like we kind of like feel like, oh, we're just sort of playing into that trope, right? Of like Light Hope being mysterious and like withholding information. But it ends up like working so well for the story because like
it's so completely deliberate.
exactly. Like it's intentional that she's withholding all these things.
It's a little it works here because compared to instances of it being used unironically, when you're watching a show or you're reading a book or watching a movie and the mysterious magical authority figure is like withholding information, all in time it will be revealed. It's like, actually all of this would be much easier if you just gave me all the cards up front.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And it becomes frustrating, and it's typically just something that that writers do to just like dole out the story at their own pace. Whereas with this, it really is just like completely deliberate, like actively trying to withhold information.
Absolutely.
Not for the sake of the pacing of the plot, but because if she did reveal all the cards, she knows that it would.
I mean, Adora wouldn't do it, right? Adora would be like, "Fuck you." And totally tune. Entrapta saying, "I've waited years for someone to ask me about my theory." Is a very autistic moment.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can agree with that.
Well, see, I'm an asshole who just like talks at people about the stuff I love anyway, whether they like it or not.
Oh, we know, we know.
I'd apologize, except I'm not sorry.
Well, I say that with all the love, Tom. We know and we love when you talk about your nerdy loves with us.
Now, excuse me while I talk about Taxi Driver,
Blade Runner, exactly. Yeah, so really, really brilliantly written, kind of like amoral character, right, in Light Hope. with her own, what's the word I'm looking for? Agenda.
Mm.
All right. Oh, and we get like this little so yeah, so this is important too, right? Like I talked about this a little bit last time too, right? About how the way that Light Hope talks about like who Shira is in comparison with Adora, right? Like Light Hope talks about it as if they're like two separate people, right? Like there have been many before you, the line was broken, like you are now like disconnected from Shira, right? But like we know now that we've watched the show, and like Madame Raz knows, right, that Adora and Shira are like in fact one and the same person.
Mm.
um and I'm ready for your Fire Emblem fan fiction. Feel free to share that.
I don't think I am ready for that. If you send me Fire Emblem fan fiction, it's going straight in the incinerator. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Or like yeah, anyway, I was gonna say something else, but never mind. um
That's us today. Just like stray thoughts, like, nope, not gonna
no,
say
not worth
that.
saying. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's see, what else do I have in my notes here. Okay, yeah, so I don't know if this is this scene, but the next note I have about is about Mara. Yeah, so you're the first Shira in 1,000 years, right? And then okay, yeah, so we actually go back to Entrapta before we get to the Mara part, so I'll say that for a bit. But yeah, so this is the scene where we kind of get in Scorpia's backstory, right? And we're kind of okay. Sorry, we're going back and forth, so I'm going back and forth because I forgot that this episode goes back and forth between these two scenes. Let's start one at a time because I'm going a little crazy here. So first of all, with Entrapta and Scorpia, right? Like we get the backstory of what happened with the Black Garnet and with Scorpia too, right? Like um we find out that Scorpia is like the original kind of like owner of the Black Garden, or like Black
Or her
Garnet,
her
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 family, right?
lineage, yeah.
Yeah, and like she
Which
is the one who's supposed to have like this connection to it.
which in a sense kind of draws an unexpected parallel between Scorpia and She-Ra. Not
Yes.
Adora, but She-Ra.
Yes. Totally. Totally.
Where a large part of Scorpia's arc is shedding the terrible mistakes her her family made and her lineage made, and re-embracing her connection to the Black Garnet. In other words, discovering gay.
Right, exactly.
In a similar way to both Adora and Mara, like doing the best that they can to shed the mistakes of the first ones, and the
Yeah.
circumstances of their creation and what they're kind of designed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is also like that kind of parallel too, right? With like Etheria kind of being like a representation of like an indigenous population, and the first ones being like this colonial settler like entity, right?
Gotta
Uh
love colonialism.
like this colonial entity. Yeah, exactly. And I mean this show is not shy from that allegory, right? Like especially once we get like to Horde Prime and um uh his like almost manifest destiny attitude. The show really does not shy away from that allegory. And Shira and Scorpia are almost like these like figureheads of an indigenous population, right? Of like an indigenous community that is here on Etheria, and how the settlers have like stripped them of their identity, right? And their culture, right? Like uh Scorpia not even having like this connection to the Black Garnet anymore. Like it just feels so evocative to me of like people who've like had to be separated from their cultures, right? Like I think about like the indigenous kids who are like ripped away from their families and like put into boarding schools, right, to like be indoctrinated into like this
Mm.
agenda, right? And like it's almost similar here with Scorpia, right? Like she doesn't even know like what her connection to the Black Garnet is, and like because it's been so removed like through generations, right? And this show continues to kind of like have those parallels to like the real life atrocities that happen as well to indigenous populations.
And then they sent her to conversion therapy.
I mean, yeah, literally, right? I mean, this show
Don't even know she's gay.
is super like clear with the allegories to me, at least.
Is it better than Wednesday?
It is better than Wednesday.
Is it better than Wednesday, where this friggin' straight character gets threatened with conversion therapy?
Oh my god. I can pretty confidently say that this show is much better than Wednesday.
Like, if you're gonna bring, if you're gonna explicitly bring up conversion
I
therapy,
know.
in this context,
How are you
just
gonna literally call it conversion therapy for a straight
like
character?
just make her gay. For
Literally,
God's
literally.
sake.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh, Tim, Tim,
Friggin'
you
Tim.
bellend, Tim. God.
All right, we're off track again. All right, let's go back. Let's go back to Shira and Adora, right? So like we get this quote unquote backstory, right, from Light Hope about what Mara was up to, right? And this is not the first instance we get of Mara, but I gotta say I really like the way that they set up the kind of mystery around Mara. I feel like it's just so intriguing. Like they really get you invested, like right from the beginning. Like, oh, Mara, like she's so mysterious. Like what happened? They really make you wonder, like what went on with her. Like what is the truth? Because like they also make it like pretty obvious. I feel that like what Light Hope is saying here is not entirely the full truth, right?
It's
Um,
Mara. There's that thing of, we get two perspectives on Mara before we see anything of Mara speaking for herself.
right, exactly.
And the first perspective is Light Hope's perspective, where, you know, Mara, like, yeah, Mara, there's a legacy that precedes her. Supposedly she did something terrible, but we don't know what it is, and it's like, okay, something doesn't seem right about this. And then the other perspective is just like the perspective of what little scraps of information are left behind. Like they
Right.
find Mara's ship, and there's just like a hologram of her saying, I'm Mara, I'm Shira."
Yeah, and then like Madame Raz just like calling Adora Mara, right? And being like, "Oh yeah, Mara and I are going to make a pie."
It's like it's a legacy thing,
Yeah.
right? Where there's this character who is not a character, she's an idea,
Yeah.
and thus all we see of her is either what the first ones wanted her to be presented as, or what Light Hope wants us to think about her in retrospect.
Right, exactly.
And then the first time we see her speak for herself is in her ship as well, and that's when they find the hologram of her like gravely injured.
Right. Right.
And it's like the sudden juxtaposition of this like legacy figure, this like this not really faceless literally, but like figuratively faceless
Right.
legacy figure who we know really nothing about other than what her role was and what she supposedly did in very vague terms. And all of a sudden you see her in this like broken, vulnerable position. And it's just very, very jarring 180 from everything we've had up to that point. And I think that's the big tell that
Yeah.
something's not, something's not right about what we've been told
Right.
about Mara.
Right.
And then when you actually meet her in the later seasons and you get that episode where we actually get to see her in her own time, and she's so just like normal. She's
Yeah.
just like a lady.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
where I think them building her up as this legacy figure and then kind of breaking that down systematically is so important to the delivery of Mara's character and the
Absolutely.
way we
Absolutely.
understand her to be in later seasons.
Yeah, cuz she's like very mythologized in the beginning, right? Like
Mm.
but kind of both by like, Light Hope here and eventually Adora, but almost in like a negative way with Light Hope, right? Like she snapped, she went crazy, she broke the Sheila line, she acted out of fear and desperation, right? Like she's almost like this like evil mythological figure in a weird way,
Yeah.
right? To
And
Light
then
Hope's perspective.
exactly. And then when you see her and she's like injured and desperate, it's like this doesn't seem
This doesn't
like
seem
this.
right. Yeah, exactly.
This doesn't seem like this crazy evil person to me. This just seems like a lady in an act of desperation trying to save the day.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No worries, Tune. Thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate you hanging out so far, and good luck at your convention. I hope it goes well.
Have a good one.
Yes, exactly, Jay. It turns her from an idea into a person, the way that the show kind of eventually feeds us that information,
Yeah.
right? Like she starts off as this idea, this concept, and then eventually we learn like the person behind that. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's a very succinct way of wording it.
Yeah. Also, welcome. Thanks so much for joining, Jay. All right. Let's see. What else do I have in my notes here? Oh, so as we go back to the Black Garnet scene with Catra and Entrapta and Scorpia as they all try to go into the Black Garnet. Actually, let me just make sure that there's nothing more about Light Hope I wanted to say here. I don't think there is. Oh yeah,
I guess shoulder pads.
I guess just specifically like something that Light Hope is like yeah, the shoulder pads. Something that Light Hope does here, right? Especially when she's pulling up this memory of Entrapta and like again, like when we understand like what Light Hope's real motivations are, right? Like she's trying to sever Adora from her connections. She's trying to manipulate Adora into like doing like her like goals, right? She the first ones have their set agenda and she wants Adora to do that, right? And she'll like manipulate Adora into doing that. And she's specifically like using her like Adora's martyrdom, right? Adora's inherent like guilt that Light Hope is like taking advantage of, right? Into being able to manipulate Adora into doing her bidding. So yeah, it's such a evil thing from Light Hope to like take advantage of that flaw of Adora, right? To take on that inflated responsibility. But because that is something that she does, it's really easy for Light Hope, right, to manipulate Adora into like giving everything up, right? And that's why by the end of this episode, when she's like ready to stay behind, it's like, Swiftwind has to be the one to be like, no, that's fucking stupid, you idiot. Like, come on, let's get out of here.
The manifestation of her gay pride.
Literally, exactly. But yeah, just the manipulation, the guilt, Adora's martyrdom makes it very easy to do that, right?
Yeah, nothing Light Hope really does is evil per se, because Light Hope doesn't have a concept of evil.
Right.
Because Light Hope's just a frigging computer. Which I suppose casts her actions in a complicated light in with respect to the way the audience perceives her.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like people are more likely to be forgiving of Light Hope than they are of Catra.
yeah. Which is wrong.
Which is wrong. But it's something.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Jumping back to the Black Garnet scene. After, of course, Light Hope being like, it's better to let go of your friends, let go of your attachments, let go of your gayness. And we're all just like, no, embrace it, Adora, embrace gay.
Embrace gay. That's the central message.
I mean, unironically, all joking aside, that really is the central message, is embrace gay. So Shadow Weaver shows up, right? Because she's angry about the Black Garnet, blah, blah, blah. It's supposed to be hers. And it's so, like, Catra is such an interesting character, right? Like, she is able to stand up to Shadow Weaver here because, like, she knows she has the upper hand, right? Like, Catra is really smart. Like, she's not smart because she like doesn't understand herself and she doesn't like understand like why she's doing the things that she is doing. But like once she figures out like what she's doing, not necessarily like why she's doing it, but like what she's doing, she's really good at like getting that, right? And so like
She'd be great at poker.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Hello, Zoe. Welcome, welcome, and happy New Year to you as well. Thanks for joining us. But yeah,
Hello.
Katra, she's like a really good manipulator. She's a really good, gosh, how can I say that? Like, she's a very like Machiavellian character, right? Like, she's really good at playing the cards she knows that she has. Because like we get in this scene, right? Like, she's able
Yeah.
to, like overstep Shadow Weaver and like go over her head, right? And go over her head to Hordak, right? And like the fact that Katra was able to like put herself in this position, right? It kind of shows a lot about like where she is, and we'll kind of see in this scene too, right? When Katra eventually turns on Shadow Weaver and like fights her, right? She straight up says the line, right? Like, I learned it from you. I learned how to be strong. I learned how to like stay on my toes from you, because this is how Shadow Weaver had been treating Katra her entire life, right? By
Yeah, and
like stepping over her and manipulating her.
it also frames kind of how Catra treats people
Yes,
as like
yes.
as this kind of disposable tools and blunt instruments and weapons. Because that's how she's been treated her whole life.
Yeah,
It's like she
absolutely.
doesn't really have a concept of how to treat people in any other way, except for Adora, who's the only person who's ever like leveled with her or with whom she's leveled since they were kids.
Yeah, yeah,
But otherwise,
absolutely.
people are just kind of disposable to her. Hence, the whole entrapped her thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I have in my notes here. My note just says, "This is the first instance of Katra overstepping slash overpowering someone for more power through manipulation. We'll see how well it goes for her when she tries this again, and we'll see how well it goes for her when she tries this again." um, Yeah, and like, this is something that like she directly learned from Shadow Weaver too, right? Like, Shadow Weaver literally just did this to her with Hordak, like, just a couple episodes ago. So, yeah. Um it's one of those things again, right, where it's like you can't it, I'm not the way I say this isn't the way I'm about to say this isn't necessarily exactly the way I mean it, but you can't blame Katra for what she's doing, right? Like, obviously you have to blame Katra for what she's doing. She's making these mistakes, she's doing these bad things, right? But like, she has it's there's a clear understanding of where it's coming from and why she's doing the things that she's doing. So it's one of those things where, again, I just feel a little like it's one of my pet peeves, right? When people try to shit on Katra and like call her horrible, blah blah blah, whatever. Because like, yes, of course she's a bad person, of course she's a villain, of course she's making mistakes, but like, you can't just like toss
Completely write
aside.
her off.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't just toss aside and completely write off all of the things that got her to this position, right?
Yeah, it's the show itself. It knows what Catra does wrong, and it knows that Catra is the problem, and the show itself does not create the illusion that we're supposed to simply excuse what she does. She has to make up for it, and she does. But an important part of us supposedly being open to that happening in the first place is understanding the complex nature of who she is and why she is the way that she is.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
she's
exactly.
not just like a Disney villain who's evil for the sake of being evil. There's a whole wealth of information as to, you know, it's complicated because it's like no one's saying she's not responsible for her actions, but
Right.
she's not the only person responsible for her actions.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Definitely, definitely. And yeah, exactly, Jay. The one person that didn't treat her as a tool and manipulate her, like, totally abandoned her, right? And of course, she's like gonna feel some issues after that. So yeah, she feels like manipulation and like overpowering is really the only way of survival, right? Because that's how she's been treated her whole life. And the only person, like you said, Jay, the only person who hasn't done that just straight up left her. So yeah, she feels abandoned by that, right? So yeah, that's her way of protecting herself. I freaking love
Embrace
Entrapta
Jay.
here. Like, all right, everyone, let's get weird. Like, she's just so funny and fun. I love her. Her little eyebrow wiggle is so good. Oh man.
Entrapped to Marry Me Challenge 2022.
Entrapta marry me challenge.
Parentheses impossible. Frowny face.
Impossible. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Last day of 2022, so it's a little too late for that
Oh my
challenge.
gosh. Yeah. She's got a couple hours left.
Somehow I don't think she's gonna make it.
All right. So after this whole Black Garnet deal, we see Bo, Glimmer, and Swiftwind all going and looking for Adora, right? And they end up, fighting against the Black Garnet magic and fighting her, and the weather gets all wonky, and they eventually get to the temple, or wherever this thing is, whatever you call it. And like Swiftwind is like able to open it up, right? Like with his magic or whatever. So again, like that connection is there. And the next thing I have in my notes here is actually like this is actually probably one of my favorite Swiftwind moments, like in the show, right? So we see Adora, right? Like she's unconscious. She's like in the mind space with Light Hope or whatever, right? And Swiftwind gets that connection to her and is able to speak with her, right? And I love how we see it as like them kind of breaking through, right? And like at first Adora's like scared and worried because like Light Hope is disappearing, right? And she doesn't know what to do. But Swiftwind shows up, right? And I really do love this scene a lot, and I love this dialogue a lot as well, because like Swiftwind, like to your point, right, being a representation of Adora's gay pride, right? He's the most like blunt and like straightforward, like one of the most
he's anything but straight.
Yes, he's anything but straight, but he's like the most like blunt character, right? Like
he's bent forward.
He doesn't hold back, right? Yeah, exactly. I can see why you're friends with Poe and Glimmer. It's really funny. But yeah, he just straight up says, right, like, what is the point of your powers if you don't use them to help the people you care about, right? And this is like another way of saying, with great power comes great responsibility, right? He straight up says, like, that's stupid. That's stupid for you to think that, like, it's stupid for you to think that you have to be away from your friends, right? And he's like, look, I've literally been able to form complex thoughts for like a week, and I know that you're being fucking stupid. Yeah, and like he has a really good point here too, right? Like, what use is your power if you're not going to use it to help people, right? And help the people that you care about, right? And like this is what Adora has to like discover about herself, right? Like she has to find this like balance, right, of taking on this like responsibility of her power and like what she has to do with it, but not falling to that overburdened sense of responsibility where like everything becomes her fault and she's unable to take action because she feels like every move she makes is incorrect, right? Like there's definitely a balance that Adora needs to like find here between like responsibility and martyrdom.
It kind of makes me wonder to what degree is Swiftwind actually literally intended to be like an extension of a part of Adora's self that she does not really have wholesale.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
she wills Swiftwind into existence with the She-Ra magic.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's he's like a familiar, isn't he? That's basically what he is. He's a familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in a similar way as with Catra and her alien cat friend later, who
yeah.
is something of a not literally but figuratively like an extension of Catra and the way Catra works and
and
the way
I
the creature is extremely sensitive to external emotional stimuli, which is, I mean, that's Catra all over.
Yeah.
I feel like Swiftwind really is just like a part of Adora that kind of doesn't exist but should.
No, absolutely 100%. And I feel like the text really supports that reading, right? Like Swiftwind is created through the power of the sword, and the sword is, Adora's connection to She-Ra, and we know that She-Ra is Adora, right? So like Swiftwind being an extension of Shira and therefore being an extension of Adora, right? Like that is very much supported with the text, and the fact that even Swiftwind was able to open up, right, like this temple, like he is a part of Adora in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think that what you said is like right on the money.
And they have a friggin' psychic
They
connection.
do, they do. And yeah, exactly, Kitty Garden. Exactly what you said. The show's one big deconstruction of the Spider-Man quote. That's yeah, with great power comes with great responsibility. That's exactly right.
I mean, you're not wrong. It kind of is. Like it deconstructs that down to the very core, even to the idea of actually measuring whether or not it's correct.
Right, exactly, exactly, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of I don't know. I really love Spider-Man. Spider-Man is probably my favorite Marvel superhero. Um I feel like there's a lot of Spider-Man in Adora, like similar character arcs, right? You know, finding your true self, finding your responsibility, you know, making these connections through the people that you care about. And there's a lot of that in Buffy too. There's a lot of parallels between Buffy and Spider-Man. I bet y'all were waiting for the Buffy reference. It was coming. So yeah, there's a lot of connections there, and I feel like they're all like kind of similar in a way. Like I want to see them all have lunch together or something.
Yeah, and there's there's always a tragedy to it as well. In all three cases, you know,
Yes,
with
yes, of
Shira and with
course.
Buffy and with Spider-Man, there's always a tragedy to it.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
but it kind of like where do we sit on it? You know, I think Spider-Man, it's impossible to say. Spider-Man's been like tossed back and forth between so many writers. Like, you know, Steve Ditko. Did Steve Ditko create the character? Ditko was like super right wing. Um, but then something like this is like the opposite of that. And so its
Mm.
assessment of that idea is a little less uh what's the word I'd use? Not like jingoistic, but like it's a little it's like it's less I don't know, it's less absolute.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's less
Yeah,
absolute. Like
yeah,
for every with great power comes great responsibility, there's another character to say what? So you're just predestined to do what destiny says, and you don't get a say in this at all. You have
right.
no, you know, even to the point where the characters like break destiny. They're like, no, we're gonna we're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
break
yeah.
destiny, and
Exactly, right?
you
I mean,
know,
like that's what Buffy does in the end of season one, right? Like she literally breaks the prophecy, right?
but she doesn't. She kind of does. She kind of doesn't. She does die.
Yeah, she does. She like yeah, she like breaks the prophecy in her own way, right? That's like the thing. Um,
Whereas Adora's like, okay, but what if I smashed the sword?
right, exactly. Yeah, 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 totally, totally. So the way that they take their own agency, right, is something that further deconstructs that idea of responsibility, right? Like what is their real responsibility? Like where's the line, right? Where's that line of responsibility? I think that that's an important question that the show asks.
And then Catra's like, okay, but what if I just didn't do anything that you say?
Exactly, exactly. And I have in my notes here, right, just you know about this idea of you know, Swiftwind just putting it plainly, you know, what good are your powers if you don't use them to help people? And that's basically reminding Adora, right, that it's not her martyrdom that helps people, it's her actions, right? It's her choices that she decides to do for herself, and like her choices. And then you know this line that she says here: in choosing her attachments, my friends are part of who I am. In making that choice, that is like reaffirming that connection, right, of Adora and Shira and who she truly is. So I really love the way that all of that is like tied together. And then you know I feel like this works on the next level too, right? Like this works on the level of like, oh, she's not willing to put in, you know, take on the responsibility. She wants to take herself out of the equation. But then, you know, later by the end of the show, when she wants to like sacrifice herself, she has to realize that like again, it's not her responsibility that makes her who she is. It's her attachments that make her who she is, right? Like she needs to be there for her friends and for her gay lover. But like it's not about
True.
it's not about that responsibility, right? It's not about her power. It's not about her what she's able to accomplish, right? It's not about her like physical prowess or whatever, right? It's about her love for her friends and her inherent desire to protect the people that she cares about, right? That's who She-Ra is, that's who Adora is, and that's who Gay is.
That's who Gay is.
Exactly.
Is that their first name or their last?
Gay.
Like Mario.
Like Mario, exactly. Let's see. Spider-Man and She-Ra are two sides of the same coin, the ebb and flow of processing trauma for fighting for a better future. Yeah, absolutely. Good. That's a really good parallel, Kitty. I like that a lot. Her squeeze, yeah, her main squeeze, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I really love this idea of attachments being what define Adora and She-Ra. And that's kind of how the episode ends, right? They fight their way out, and it's kind of a happy ending after that.
And then they all die. The end.
Well, they have to go back to Bright Moon, right? Because they realize that they're in danger or whatever. So
Glimmer gets to wear some cool armor.
Yeah. And yeah, you know, Catra realizing that this thing is happening, and she can use this, right, to go attack Bright Moon. And it's important to understand like her motivations for why she's like going to attack Bright Moon, right? Because like right now at this point in the story, like the Horde, like obviously with Bright Moon being weaker, there is like that quote unquote tactical advantage for them to attack right now, right? But there's no real reason for them to attack Bright Moon right now. It's not like Bright Moon has something that they need or anything like that, right? Literally, like the only reason that Catra wants to go after them at this point is one, they're vulnerable in this moment, right? She has this opportunity that she wants to like seize, but also she very much wants to take revenge, right? Like she feels hurt at feeling abandoned at what Adora like left her, and she feels like Adora left her for, you know, joining the princesses, right? She feels that that sense of betrayal, and so she wants to have payback for that, right? And that's like part of like her motivation. Because we know that Catra is a very emotional person, right? She's very much motivated by her emotions. So even if this doesn't make logical sense, you know, there's no real reason to put yourself, Catra, at risk by going after Bright Moon right now. So even if it doesn't make logical sense, because she is fueled by her emotions, she's fueled by that anger, that sense of like wanting to take revenge. This is what eventually fuels her to wanting to attack Bright Moon for the season finale.
And also it means that Entrapta gets to try out some new toys.
Yeah. her fun new gadgets. All right, so that was that episode. Did you have anything else you wanted to say for that one?
I don't.
Great.
I don't have anything to add to that, but I think now that we're kind of reaching the end of the first season, I feel like it's I feel the need to say that I like sometimes while I'm watching this, I forget that it's a reboot.
Yeah, like,
right? But it's so much more like stylistically and creatively comprehensive than the original. The original is just like a nothing. It's like a nothing. It came out in a period of that like 80s pop cultural history where everything was hyper consumerist and everything was like so vacuous and vapid. And,
right.
And there are a lot of people who have a ton of nostalgia for it, but it almost feels wrong to call this a reboot because it's so much its own
different
thing.
Yeah.
This is the canonical She-Ra, right?
Yes.
This is the canonical She-Ra. The 80s cartoon is just a toy commercial.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know? And I just felt the need to say that because when you called it a reboot, you described it as a reboot. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a reboot.
Yeah.
It so much doesn't feel like a reboot at all. You know?
Yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't like think of this as a reboot, but from like a corporate executive perspective, like this would definitely be a reboot, right?
I think the only time I ever remember that it's a reboot is when I remember how stupid the names are.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, oh yeah,
freaking light spinner or whatever. Yeah,
light spinner. Yes. Glimmer,
Lightspinner and
Bow.
Shadow Weaver? Do you think there's a connection there?
Do you think they thought super hard about the name Bow? They're like, oh, he uses a bow,
He uses a bow and
so
arrow, so bow.
his name's Bo. Oh, great, cool. They didn't even like spell it like the name, like the name Bo, like B-A or B-E-A-U.
Or even
They didn't even,
B-O.
they didn't spell it. Like it's just the word
It's just
Bo.
B-O-W. Yeah, exactly.
And when you look at that, you're like, oh yeah, this is a remake of a terrible 80s toy commercial.
That's right. That's right.
Where they collectively thought about the names of all the characters for like two fucking minutes.
Castaspella, that's another one. Yeah, Natasa, right?
And like really, like the naming conventions in the Masters of the Universe thing is so lazy because it starts with He-Man. It's like, oh, we've got this big muscular man. What are we going to call him?
Man guy.
Man guy. He-Man. Dude bloke.
Human person.
Human male. And then they're like, well, now we need a lady version. So what do we call them?
Something.
She-Ra.
Yeah, that works.
It's so lazy. It's so lazy.
Yeah.
This character has sparkle powers, so what do we call them?
Right, Glimmer.
Glimmer.
No, Kitty is exactly right here. It's a reboot in the same way that Shrek is a fairy tale reboot, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's
Man squared. Oh my gosh, y'all are funny.
It's crazy. It's crazy just how much they did with this.
Yeah. This is like an actual story.
I don't know if you know this, but Netflix did also do a reboot of He-Man. Did you know that?
They? I did not know that.
Yes. They did a reboot of Masters of the Universe and they did a reboot of He-Man. And I was like, when I heard they were doing a reboot of He-Man, my first thought was, oh my God, are they getting the original like She-Ra?
Right, yeah.
What are they gonna do with that? That would be really cool to see. But then I suddenly thought, like, I can't see Nate Stevenson like wanting to do that.
Yeah.
It's not the same story. It doesn't have the same implications. I can't see him being interested.
Yeah.
And then I looked at it and it's Kevin Smith and it's like, oh no.
No. Yeah, so probably terrible.
Not Kevin Smith. And it was really bad.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all.
It's what could have been, but the thing is, like, Kevin Smith talked about it, and he was like, "Yeah, no, I really loved the Nate Stevenson show. I don't want to do anything like that, though. I want it to be just like a straightforward reboot."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why are you doing it then?
Right, exactly. Like, what's even the point? I also don't want to ignore what Jay said in the chat a little while ago. Catra always seems to be seeking attention, but never knows what to do when she gets it. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, right? Because like she doesn't know what she wants, right? Like she deep down inside she wants like validation. She wants like to feel like she belongs, right? She doesn't want to feel like alone. Like these are the things that deep down that she wants, right? But like she doesn't know how to articulate that. And so she ends up just like having these like feelings of hurt and anger and like lashing out, right? Because she like doesn't know what to do with these feelings.
Yeah, and like Adora, it takes her like 6 full seasons to figure that out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The first note I have here is actually about Entrapta. Entrapta spinning is so cute. I love this like the spin that she does in the chair, like wee with her hair spinning. Like it's just so cute. Wee. And then we have the scene later with Adora, right?
Have you ever seen Entrapta's original design from the 80s show?
I think we did. It's not great.
It's awful. It's so bad.
Yeah, it's not great. Let's see. So yeah, Angela is trying to, save Bright Moon by keeping the crystal working or whatever, but she's like struggling and all this stuff, right? Then She-Ra eventually comes back, or Adora comes back, right? And there's a line here, right? An important line. I forget where exactly it comes in here, but like, someone asks like, what if She-Ra can't do it, right? Like, what if she isn't enough to be able to stop an army of the Horde, right? And Adora says the line, well, then what good is she, right? What good is She-Ra if she can't even like protect it, right? And this is something that like she's gonna have to grapple with, right? Like her sense of worth, right? Her entire sense of self-worth is dependent on what she's able to accomplish for other people, right? Because this is how she was brought up in the Horde, right? Like, they were not brought up with love. They were not brought up with like, made to feel good about themselves, right? They were made to be soldiers. They were made to be judged on their ability to fight. Sorry, say that again.
They're disposable. If they can't
Right,
fight, then they're
exactly.
useless, and they're cast aside. And they're
Exactly,
ostracized.
exactly, right? So that's part
It's an
of why.
inverse. It's an inverse of the same kind of lessons that Catra learned, except in
Yes.
Catra's case, it informs how she treats other people, and in Adora's case, it informs how she treats herself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, totally.
Um,
So like Adora, this is part of why I feel like I relate to Catra a lot more than I relate to Adora, but I do relate to parts of Adora too, right? But like this is a really interesting parallel kind of like juxtaposition between these two characters, right? So like they were both raised with this idea of like, if you can't fight, if you can't be a soldier, if you can't be of any use to us, then you're no good to us, right? You're disposable, you're expendable, we don't need you, right? And Catra has taken this feeling and she has almost like accepted, right? Like, oh, I'm never going to be good enough. So I'm going to decide now that I don't care, right? Or at least I'm going to tell them that I don't care about like feeling like I'm not good enough, right? Because that's going to protect me from that feeling of feeling like not worthy, right?
yeah.
But of course she does inherently feel that, and so she uses like manipulation and whatever to try to get on top, right? But she deflects that feeling, right? She almost rejects it by saying like, no, I don't actually care about that. I'm gonna detach myself and like just do my own thing, right? And that's how she continues to go down her path and make her mistakes. Whereas with Adora, she completely takes that on for herself, right? Like she feels like she has to do it, right? Whereas with Katja, she feels like, I'm going to reject this. Whereas Adora is like, I'm going to completely embrace this. And if I can't do this, if I can't, line up with these expectations of me, then I'm completely worthless, right? I'm completely useless, and there's no
Mm.
use to me being here. I'm not good enough, right? Whereas with Katra, she feels that not good enough, but then she pushes that away in order to like save herself from those feelings, right? But Adora kind of fully embraces those feelings.
And it's something that she's kind of like not necessarily deliberately on the part of her peers, but something she is kind of encouraged to do by the lofty expectations everybody has of her,
Right.
particularly Glimmer and Queen Angela. You
Right.
know,
Exactly.
when you get that moment in season whatever, season four, I don't remember when it happens, but it's the moment when Glimmer is sort of having her spiral,
Mm-hmm.
her corruption arc, so to speak. Not quite a corruption arc, but
Right.
and Adora says like, I'm doing my best, why can't you see that? And then she says, well, maybe your best isn't good enough or my mother would still be alive. And it's like, so like, what such
Ooh.
an exceptionally fucked up thing to say. But it is a manifestation of that thing, that same idea of like, if She-Ra can't do this, then what good is she?
Right. Exactly. Um, another example of the silly names being silly. It's in the name, Net Tassa. Like, come
Net
on.
tosser. At least they're like aware of it. They're aware
Yeah,
of how silly the names are, and they're like,
yeah.
"Look, it's in the contract. We just have to use the names. I'm really sorry."
Yeah, it's like we got to work with what we got. I toss nets, okay?
Boom, nets.
Oh my god. Yeah. That's so funny. Let's see. Um, let's see. Yeah, Shira or Adora being like, yeah, Shira can't take out an army of Horde soldiers, then what good is she? Yeah, just that sense of like she has been taught, right, that her entire self-worth is based off of like how useful she is to other people.
Oh, excuse me. God, I'm really feeling the time.
Oh yeah, we'll. I only have like a few more notes on this episode since this episode is a lot of like action, right? So I don't have too much to
It's a
say
lot of
about it.
Adora doing what she does best, running around punching the big thing, and
Hitting
then
stuff with their
sometimes
big
throwing.
sword, yeah.
It's what she's good at. It's what she likes. It's what she enjoys. And
Yeah.
also wearing jorts.
And wearing shorts, yeah,
I
exactly.
appreciate that her outfit includes jorts.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, Glimmer here, like reaffirming the theme of the show, right? Teamwork making the dream work. We'll do it together. Da, 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 da. I already talked about Katra and how
I can hear someone listening to Careless Whisper in the other room. And
oh.
it's like that's a wild dissonance to have in my brain.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. So yeah, they get ready to fight. We do the transformation sequence. It's super gay. We love to see it. Katra shows up with the army. We get the Hey Adora once again, which is super gay.
It gets increasingly gay.
This episode is just super duper gay, as we can see. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah. So yeah, Katra, we already talked about, Katra essentially doing this as revenge for being made to feel, her abandoned, feeling hurt at being abandoned, which we already talked about. I just also want to say too that like this whole battle is really well written and like really well like choreographed, I guess you could say. Because the first time I watched this episode, I was on the edge of my seat for sure. I was like, oh man, are they gonna win? Are they not gonna win? Because like a lot of times, you watch shows like this, good guys versus bad guys, and you just like have the feeling, right? Like, oh, the good guys are gonna win. That's just like how things go. That's how the story goes, right? But with this episode, I actually really felt like the stakes were high. The outcome is unsure, right? And the fact that all the princesses kind of come together at the end for like the final hurrah is like a really like triumphant moment, right? It's a really like, yes, finally, awesome. Like you kind of stand up and cheer when you see all of them come together, right? So I really love the way that this episode is written. This battle is written. It's just really good. It's really, really well done.
And also, this is a show where the good guys do lose occasionally.
Yeah, exactly too, right?
In some pretty major plot significant ways.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we start the story with them losing.
Yeah, and like, they lost
pretty
like
hard.
in the Fright Zone, right? Like they lost in Trapta, right? So that's part of, again, why I think like this is so well written, because like you don't know if they're gonna win or lose, right?
Yeah. I mean, they've already. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. They've literally already been dealt a big L.
Yeah, exactly,
like
exactly.
2 episodes ago.
Exactly, Jay. This episode is super gay, as is every episode of She-Ra. And here we go. Here's the moment, the Hey Adora moment with the snarky eyebrows and the super gay delivery, as we see. Yeah.
Is that like a postal service?
Yes, exactly.
Super gay delivery.
Super gay delivery. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then, She-Ra being like, oh, you surprised to see me? And Katra being like, not really. It wouldn't be that easy to get rid of you. Like, oh my God, just kiss already. Just freaking smooch already. The show would be over. It's like that meme that's like the book that's super long, like She-Ra if Katra is unwilling to admit her feelings. She-Ra if Adora and Katra just freaking smooch already and get rid of the sexual tension.
Yeah, like 2 chapters long.
It's like this big. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Yeah, so the tension is there, but of course they're gonna fight it out. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh yeah, the and again, just the battle is really well done, the fight is really well done. We get more about this characterization between Katra and Adora too, right? Like we see more of like Katra's hurt, we see her anger, and we've seen already throughout the first season the way that she manifests her feelings into violence, right? Into anger and violence, and her like really taking that to the extreme here and like physically attacking Adora, and like I don't know if she's like willing in this moment to kill her. I mean, she was willing to kill her earlier, right? She thought that she had killed her. But she's definitely taking it to an extreme, right?
It's just crazy foreplay. It's just 6 seasons of crazy foreplay.
Oh man, this is just lesbian foreplay.
This is how lesbians do it.
This is just how lesbians have foreplay.
Trust us, we're lesbians. We know.
Trust us. In Buffy, lesbian sex is done through doing magic spells together and like floating roses and like moving vending machines. That's how gay sex works on Buffy, and the way that gay sex works on She-Ra is they just try to kill each other.
And also, I mean, I don't know, Faith and Buffy, they also.
Oh, that's true. That is pretty gay as well. So yeah, they've got the killing each other gay tension on Buffy too. I was wrong.
How could you be so wrong?
This
is your favorite show.
How could I be so forgetful? And then we get this kind of parallel, right? We get this moment of like Catra falling off the edge of the cliff, right? She's like hanging on for dear life. And we get this, and I feel like this is very intentional, right? This is very intentionally a parallel to the last episode where Adora was hanging off by the tips of her fingers, right? And Catra very decidedly let Adora go to fall to her death there. But here, even though it's like a fight, and even though they're like fighting each other, Adora very decidedly does not just let Catra fall, right? She picks her up, and this is a super sexy moment right here where she grabs Catra by her shirt and pins her against the wall, and it's like, damn, just freaking smooch already, you two, seriously. But decidedly it is important to note that Adora doesn't let Catra just like fall to her death, right? And she like doesn't want to kill Catra. She just wants to like let her know that she lost this battle. She just
wants to smooch.
She just wants to freaking smooch. It's just smooch. That's already. Oh my gosh. But of course, like they are continuing to fight. Adora again feeling that responsibility, feeling like, oh man, like I can't do this like all on my own, right, or whatever. And so she leaves Catra to go help the rest of them fight. Again,
rest in spaghetti Catra.
Rest in spaghetti. Again, the choreography and just the writing of this battle is really well done. Scorpia showing up here is like, oh man, like the fight is on. I was about to punch you, right? And then she punches. So great. And like one thing I really love about this show, right? And a part of what makes a lot of these fight sequences like so well done. And this is something that like Steven Universe did really well too. It's that each character, aside from like the random faceless army guys, but like each character, right? All the princesses, they have a very distinct character, right? Each of them is fighting as themselves. Actually, it's not as much as Steven Universe, but like Owl House is the show rather I meant to compare it to, because the Owl House, like each character has their own like track of magic, and they each have their own specialty and their own style of fighting that they use when they fight against enemies. And I feel like She-Ra does that really well too, right? Like with using everyone's individual strengths and powers to create this choreography, right? This fight choreography that ends up feeling very like tense and very and also like very unique too, right? Like it's not just like every kind of punch kick fight battle, right? Like they are using their own specific personalities and strengths to fight against the enemy, and that's what makes these battles so much more fun and interesting than say like just a generic like sword fight tank army blast kind of battle, right? Like we're seeing Adora like using the sword and shield. We're seeing Bo using like his arrows and his like tech and stuff like that too, right? We're seeing
does have arrows. That's right. He does in fact have arrows.
He does.
I never noticed that before.
Wow. I know it's really subtle. It's really subtle. It's hard to miss.
Bo is one of my favorites in combat because he gets to do some like creative shit.
Yeah, his stuff is really fun.
I really love the bit. I think it's the episode when Flutterina, quote unquote, is introduced, and Bo uses like a stick and some string.
Yeah, yeah.
He like does a whole like MacGyver thing to get out of that situation. Bo doesn't have magic.
Yep.
He just has a midriff and a dream. And
His
a heart
midriff
full of
is where his power comes from.
He's got a midriff and a dream and a heart full of song, and he's gonna make it work. He's gonna make it work. He's gonna make the dream work.
Exactly, exactly. That's why we love him.
And then Seahawk's method is just set fire to boats.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why
Ram
we love
them into
him.
things.
Yeah, and with all the princesses too, right? Like, you know, just when we feel like all hope is lost, when we feel like the battle is not going to end the way we want it to, right? And Shira, right? This is kind of an important moment for Bo and Shira. It's like something that is important for Adora to like learn later, right? Like Adora is feeling like she failed, like she isn't able to do this on her own, and Bo says that's okay, right? Like he hugs her and is like, that's okay. Like even though they're you know, they think that they're about to die, they think they're about to like be taken out, right? Like Bo never blames Adora, and
Bo is the only one with his shit together, as
Yeah.
we've established.
Yeah, exactly, right? He's the only like emotionally mature character out of like the entire cast. And so it's important to note here that like he never harbors any kind of resentment or blame towards Adora. Like there's just pure love and friendship there. Which is something that Adora has to learn, right? Because when you accept that like you can't necessarily do everything on your own, that's what will allow you to open yourself up to accepting help from other people, right? And that's eventually what ends up happening in this moment, right? The moment when we see like the water come up is like so awesome, right? Because like we know what's about to happen, we know who's coming, and it's just like such an epic, like, you know, jump up out of your chair and like cheer moment, right? Getting to see all the princesses like come back.
Yeah, it's like Avengers Endgame, except I care about what's happening on screen.
Exactly. A midriff and a dream, the Bo autobiography. Exactly, exactly, Ed.
Can't forget about the Heartful of Song.
And the Heartful of Song, of course. Yeah, so the princesses show up, and you know, the princesses too, right? Like they not only use their unique powers, but their own kind of unique like style of fighting, right? Like you said, with Seahawk being like the reckless, like setting boats on fire, and
that's his one move.
Yeah, exactly. And like Mermista and Perfuma being more like controlled and powerful with their like, you know, plant and water magic, and, you know, their elegance as well too, right? It really their personalities are very much imbued in their fighting style, and that's what makes this like fun and interesting and really well done, in my opinion.
I refuse to believe that anyone ever brings Seahawk purposefully, except for as a date to Princess Prom. Like
exactly.
In a fight, no one's bringing him on purpose. He just insists on coming along.
He's just like, oh, a fight? Adventure!
Adventure!
He even like says that after they win. He's just like, oh, and they're all like cheering. They're like, yeah, we did it. We won. Adventure! It's really good.
Why we love him with his gay little mustache.
His little gay mustache. Ugh, Seahawk and Mermista are so bye for bye. It hurts.
Even the straight ships in the show are gay.
Exactly. Glimmer and Bo are also super bye for bye.
He's a himbo.
He's
Mr. Seahawk. He's been drinking his respect whammon juice.
His respect whammon juice.
He's got no thoughts in that little head of his.
No thoughts at all.
Pure of heart, dumb of ass.
Yes, exactly. I love how this show, like, you know, there's so many like himbo characters, but they're all like so lovable and unique in their own ways.
And most of them are women.
yeah, most of them are women too. Oh, so good.
Adora's a himbo.
Scorpia's a himbo. Oh man, so good. I love this this final moment too, right? You know, it's a really sweet moment with Glimmer getting her powers back, getting healed, and her mom like saying, you know, go get him, right? And it's just like a really sweet moment between the two of them. And
then they commit some war crimes.
And then they do some crimes, yeah. And then I this moment is really, really fun too, right? With all of them kind of like turning rainbow and like using their powers like combined together. It really kind of drives home that theme of the show, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. Friendship is the power. Friendship is the true treasure. The Seahawk setting the boat on fire, right? Everyone using their own unique ways of battling to take everyone out. Glimmer blipping back and forth. Bo shooting his arrows. It's really, really good and just like a really feel good, like triumphant moment, right? And I love the moment when they all like use their rainbow powers coming together. Again, like the show is not being subtle with the gayness. I feel like
If you put all the characters next to each other, they make a beautiful rainbow.
this freaking rainbow, and I almost made this the background for the stream today. But this moment where Katra is just getting completely overpowered by this rainbow, and she just like flies off the screen.
Just accept Katra. Stop fighting it.
Accept the gay, Katra. The gay is being blasted right in your face, and you can't fight it. You can't fight it anymore. I just love this moment, this little moment of just tiny Katra just being flung off the screen with the power of overwhelming gay. Oh my god, it's so good.
All that happened to me.
Just overwhelmed by gay.
Fling me off the screen.
So good, so good. Yeah, and they all like cheer in the background, and there's like a little Seahawk going "Adventure" in the back.
Adventure.
He just like pops up in the back like "Adventure." It's so good.
I bet Seahawk is great fun at parties.
Oh, he's the best. He's absolutely the best. Okay, and then at the end of it, right, Katra goes back defeated. We won. It's a feel good moment. We're all like feeling great about winning, and Angela's like thank you, and Adora's feeling good about accomplishing the goal, right? But something that she kind of like fails to learn here, right, is that like the only reason that they won is because she wasn't doing it on her own, right? Is because she was able to rely on other people to help her, right? And that's
Seahawk showed up and saved the day.
He literally came up here, he set a boat on fire and saved the day, all right? Embrace it, Adora, embrace it.
No one else did anything. It was just him.
Exactly.
Why is this show not called Seahawk and the Princesses of Power?
Exactly. So the crew, they all, go to Hordak, and Katra's kind of got her tail between her legs, both literally and figuratively. But Entrapta, right, kind of perks up and is like, it wasn't a failure at all. It was actually a huge success. Think about like all the stuff that we learned. And of course, Katra was like, this is the closest we've ever gotten to, taking them out, right? And so, like, that's something worth, like, acknowledging, right? And also with this idea of, like, they're on their way, right? They're gonna get there soon.
Well, depends how you define soon.
Right.
This is only season 1.
Right. But, like, at least, Entrapta is saying, like, oh, this is just the beginning, right? And it's so interesting. Hordak is such an interesting character as well, too, right? Because, like, in the first couple seasons, first 3 seasons, really, he's really, like, this kind of mysterious, imposing, like, threatening figure, right? And we don't quite understand. I think, like, what makes him so threatening in the first couple seasons, right, is we don't know how strong he is, right? We don't know how easily he's able to like overpower people, because we see everyone is like in such fear of him. So we kind of assume that he has like all this power, right? But like in reality, he truly
He's just a dork-ass loser.
Yeah, he really doesn't. And he's like very weak himself, right? Like he's like disabled, right? In a way. And like he almost like uses this like veneer to overcompensate for that, and that's how he's able to like manipulate Shadow Weaver and Katra and like all these characters, right? And it's so interesting because it takes a character who doesn't see the veneer, right, and is able to like care. And does not care about the veneer, and like is able to like just see right through it to kind of get through to him, which is really interesting. And of course I'm referring to Entrapta.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Seahawk.
Yeah, Seahawk and Hordak end up having a beautiful relationship.
The rousing relationship between Seahawk and Hordak.
But no, right? It is interesting how Entrapta is like the one to get through to him. But Catra at this point kind of using her manipulation, right? And it's interesting because like she's manipulating Hordak without even kind of even knowing that that's what she's doing, right? Because like Hordak is coming from a position of being weaker, is coming from a position of like he wants to take advantage of like Catra's strength, right? Of Entrapta's knowledge, right? Of Scorpia's Black Garnet power, right? Like he's the one taking advantage of all these people to get what he wants because he's not able to do it himself, right? He has to manipulate people.
But he's not very good at it.
But he's not very
to
good
be
at
completely frank, he's terrible at it.
Yep.
He's one of those leaders who's so like obsessed with this one singular goal, he doesn't actually do any leading.
Right, exactly, right? And like he kind of outsources this work to Catra here too, right? Like it's interesting because like this is very manipulative, right? Like he says like you have another chance to prove it to me. You're my second in command now, and like it seems to be to Catra, right? Like from Catra's perspective, like she's finally getting the acknowledgement that she has worked so hard for, that she deserves, right? But from Hordak's perspective, he's seeing like, oh, these people are finally going to be able to like get me to my goal in a way that I wasn't able to do on my own. So I'm going to make them believe that I'm giving them like this sense of power, but in reality I'm like putting them in a position where I can like keep them under my thumb, right? Like Hordak is being very intentional here, but like you said, he's not very good at it, and Entrapta sees right through his dork ass self and like is very easily able to kind of like break through that, right? And kind of reveal this vulnerability later on, which I think is so brilliantly written. Like this show is a masterclass in like revealing the bigger, worse villain, right? Like, oh, the villain is not as bad as you thought they were. It turns out there's someone worse. Like first we thought it was Catra, then we thought it was Shadow Weaver, then we thought it was Hordak, and then we thought it was...
And then it turned out it was systematized religion all along.
It literally. And I really love the way that that's done. Like the way that we kind of like continue to zoom out, right? And we like learn like, oh, this person is acting this way, but it's not their fault. It's the fault of this thing, right? And oh, even that person is not acting this way out of completely their own fault. It's because of this thing.
It's a cycle of abuse,
really. Right? And we keep zooming out until we see that like that cycle of abuse comes from like this broken system, right? And it's all kind of systemic, and the way that allegory with Horde Prime is done later on in the later seasons is just so brilliantly done. And you can really tell that this show has a lot of thoughts about like evangelical religion, right? And
well,
like...
yeah, I mean, Nate Stevenson came from a very religious background.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
Something he's talked about a lot. So there's no doubt that subtext is deliberate.
Absolutely. And I think it's just brilliantly well done. And we talked about this a little bit. I don't remember if we talked about this on stream or off stream, Tom, but that's probably a big reason that this is a Netflix show, and not like a Disney show or anything like that, right? Because I don't know if Disney, I mean, I guess like they're doing it now with Philip Woodabane making the colonizer bad guy.
You always get the impression that with shows like The Owl House, they got away with that because Disney really didn't care and they were not paying attention.
Right, yeah. And also, like, Dana very much, like, fought for that, right? Like...
Disney have a complicated relationship with fascism.
Yes, they do. They do.
I don't know how many people know this, but the founder of the first American Nazi Party in the States was a member of Walt Disney's inner circle in the company.
That tracks.
Walt Disney was himself a huge supporter of the Nazi Party. Huge
absolutely.
And it's like that's a legacy that I think is hard to shake, especially when you've got like what is his name, Bob Chapek.
Yeah.
It's like, does it ever really go away?
Exactly. Yeah. Like that's the thing. It's like you can have these individuals as much as you want, right? But like there's always going to be a bigger problem when you zoom out, right? I think this show is a really good like illustration of that too. Like when you have a broken system, it doesn't it almost doesn't matter, right? Like how what the intentions of the people within the system are, because there's always going to be something that, how do I want to say this? There's always going to be something that will fault you for wanting to do the right thing, right? Like because that's just how the system is set up, right? It's almost like it's almost like the way that policing is broken, right? Like even if you are a good cop,
Policing is broken?
not to surprise you, but you know, it's that idea, right? Like there's no such thing as a good cop, right? Like even if there are good people within the police force, and I believe that there are, I truly believe that, you know, it's more complicated than on the surface, but I believe that if there is a good person within the police force, they're often punished for it, right? And they're often like punished to the point where they like can't even be good people anymore, right? Like I hear about all the people who like leave the police force, right, because they get fired, right, for trying to like stand up to corruption and things like that. Or
there's the it's a classic trope of noir, right? Because
right,
noir films have always had a complicated tumultuous relationship with the police, right? You know, the noir hero is almost always a private eye who left the police force in disgust, and the police are depicted as like, if not outright villainous, they're depicted as like a roadblock to
a
uncovering
hindrance,
the
yeah,
truth.
absolutely.
But if you look at a movie like LA Confidential, the whole point of that movie is that in the police force, you're either a bad cop or you're a good cop who becomes bad because there's no space for good cops.
Exactly.
Or you hold on to your goodness and you quit.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Which is, you know, that's a fictional example, but if you look at if you ever read the memoirs of Frank Serpico, that was his life.
Right, absolutely.
That was his actual life. Like,
and there's tons of stories out there like that. There's tons of stories of cops like that have gone through so many similar things. So yeah, this show, actually, it's funny because the show is almost a parallel to that too, right? Like Adora is like the good cop that ends up leaving. And you know, the rest of them, like Scorpia also too, right, is kind of like that, right? Like she's like that good person in the broken system that ends up having to leave once she's like
too much of a himbo to really...
once she realizes that the system isn't serving her, right, she decides to leave. And so yeah, the show is just really great at drawing all those parallels and creating those connections to those allegories, and I think it's just really, really well done. The show is good, guys. The show is really good.
It's quite good.
It's really fucking good. All right, well, that's all the notes that I had on this episode. Did you have anything else you wanted to say on this episode, on this season? Anything that you want to say about like getting ready for season 2 going forward?
No, I think I feel like I covered most of my like seasonal thoughts in our first discussion stream.
Right.
I'm gonna have to learn from my mistake and actually save some of those to the end when we talk about season 2. But no, I feel like we've kind of covered everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's She-Ra.
That's She-Ra season 1. Yay, we did it. Awesome. Yeah. I really love this season. Again, it's kind of the weakest season out of all of them, but when you look back and you rewatch it for a second time, you kind of realize like it's really tight. It's really tight. Like there's no like filler, you know, there's nothing that's useless. There's no extra fat in the first season.
The show doesn't have a single filler episode.
Yeah. There's no extra fat that needs to be trimmed or anything like that. Like it's really tight. It's really well written. It's very utilitarian in the first season, but you kind of understand why it has to be like that, and you kind of set up the foundation for like the greater, more complex things to come in the later seasons, right? So
yeah,
I don't have anything to complain about with the first season. I think it's really, really well done. Really amazing. I'm so excited to get into season 2. Season 2 and season 3 are a bit shorter than the rest of the season, so we'll probably won't be doing as many streams for those seasons, but the plan right now is to continue on with season 2 next week. You know, I also am aware that Owl House is coming back next month at some point, so you know, at some point we're gonna have to like pause She-Ra again and like talk about Owl House and then go back to She-Ra. Little back and forth there, but you know, I'll create a schedule and post it where I can, so that you guys can kind of have an idea of what to expect. And I think moving forward we'll stick with Saturdays because I don't know. They seem to be working out for me. I don't know if how do you feel about Saturdays, Tom? Working out for you too?
I'm fine with whatever. I don't mind.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I feel like maybe Saturdays will just continue on, but I will confirm that and let y'all know. So yeah, we'll be talking about season 2 next week. And then once Owl House comes back, we'll be doing Owl House discussions again once more. And yeah, I'm excited to get more into She-Ra because like season 2, season 3, and honestly season 4, season 5 are fucking gold, and I'm really
Pretty much a straight shot from here.
yeah, pretty much straight shot from here. The rest of the show is incredible. So I'm really, really excited to get into it and get into it with all of you guys. Thank you all so much for joining us for the discussion. Ed, Toon, who was there earlier, Jay, Kitty, and everyone who just popped in and everyone who may be watching in the future as well. Thank you so much. It really means the world to me. All the support is really, really awesome. And thank you all for sharing your thoughts as well. You guys had some really great insights today. Really, really loved hearing your thoughts as well. All right, let's go ahead and wrap things up. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Have a happy, wonderful new year if I don't see you. And we'll see you all in 2023. All right, y'all. Stay safe. Take care. Bye.